I don't think you get more than one mate. That's your only mate. Well, in general, in fantasy books, you get one mate and that's it. And if Lyria was his mate, how can he have two?
Girl, I don't know. Okay, that's for the book. That is for Sarah J. Maas to figure out for us. Okay. I'm just here to wish it into existence and then read and look for clues that support my delusions. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Booked on Fantasy podcast. We, Addison and Lorraine, are two best friends who explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Today, we are continuing our Heir of Fire coverage with chapters 48 through 52. I don't even have words for this set of chapters. I only have emotions, which include outrage, flabbergastion, I made that up, extreme shock, and anxiety.
Yeah, despair, sorrow, hopelessness, gut-wrenching devastation. No, it's actually so funny. Lorraine and I, as I was preparing my screen, I had 4 or 5 tabs open that was like synonyms for devastation, synonyms for catastrophic. Like it was just synonyms for really bad feelings. So same here. Not feeling good. Remember last episode when I was like, I just don't know what we're going to do. I don't feel like we can overcome this. I feel very not good. And you're like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Bet you're thinking about it now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think she's going to die. I just think it's too early for that. But when we figured out like what the creatures and everything are, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, there's this little false sense of security because hello, plot armor, right? You're like, she's probably not going to die.
Right.
But I still feel very unsettled because even if by some miracle we get out of this situation, however that may be, where do we go from here? How do we go from here? Because
true,
it ain't feeling good. It ain't feeling good. And also, I miss the witches. Where are the witches? Bring the witches back.
I know. As a quick reminder, we will be discussing chapters 48 through 52 specifically, but it is likely that references to all the books he's covered so far will come up as well. This includes TOG, COM, and TAB. If you haven't finished these books and you don't want spoilers, please pause here and then come back when you're caught up. Otherwise, the series is brand new to us, so you won't be getting any spoilers for the rest of the series, but you will be getting plenty of unhinged theories. Furthermore, we would like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we will have explicit conversations. Explicit language or potentially triggering topics may be discussed, so please be mindful of that and adjust accordingly. Housekeeping. If you are reading along with us, then next week's Heir of Fire episode will cover chapters 53 through 58. We are going to try to round out Heir of Fire and finish it off in another 2 episodes after this one. We're going to go back to having kind of longer episodes. So next, Addison, where are we at with the Onyx Storm countdown?
I'm so glad you asked. Today is October 29th, and there are 83 days until Onyx Storm is released.
Yay!
And it cannot come soon enough, baby.
Did you do your page analysis of Rebecca Yarris's little sneaky post?
Of course I did. You know what's so funny? As you guys have noticed, we just dropped a few episodes, and so I was working diligently on those. And I even put a little note to myself. I was like, oh yeah, I need to make that reel. And then I forgot. I'm sorry. I'll do it. I swear.
Oops.
I'm gonna make a little note to myself right now.
Put a reminder in your phone. All right. Finally, if you are enjoying the show, then the very best way for you to support us is to rate our podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. And thank you to everyone who has left a review or rating so far. We have read some fan mail. We've been posting the reviews that we've gotten on social media. So if you want to see if you've been featured, go follow us and check us out on social media. But if you have not done so yet, then go ahead and do it right now. Open up whatever app you're on, get your rating or review in, because obviously this greatly helps us on the podcast platform so we can continue growing our little book club community. Also, we just really enjoy reading your reviews or hearing from you because it brings us joy. So thank you.
Thank you. Also, something we should probably mention, if you do send us a text, we can't respond to text. We can only receive text. So
yeah.
I guess we should have clarified that in the beginning because we don't want you to think that we're ignoring anybody that did text us. So if you would like to have a little chitty chat, then you can DM us. And so that way we can actually message you back. But either way, we still enjoy seeing texts because, it's nice to hear your feedback and thoughts and everything. So, and it really does make us happy. But I just didn't know anyone out there thinking like, I sent them a text and they ignored me.
Yeah, you can DM us on social media. We're on there pretty often. Or we can also reply via email if you prefer that. So email.
I used to check it all the time and then we never got any emails. So now when I log in, I'll see 20 emails, but it's all just not necessarily junk. Or it's like confirmation, you posted and processed this episode. I'm like, oh, that's not from a human being. So, okay.
I actually was looking at our emails, and I saw one of the audio things that you had. Some bitch. And I was like, what happened in that one?
Kind of forgot you could see what's in that email.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, okay. All right. That is all for housekeeping. So on to the episode. We will start with the book report for chapter summaries, and then we will dive into an analysis and offer theories for each chapter. And finally, we will share our favorite moments. With that being said, Addison, please give us the book report.
Sadly, I will do that.
Oh.
I know, because I'm sad. Okay. I'm not feeling good about this. Okay. Chapter 48. There was no uproar, no hysteria when Rowan and Celaena told the fortress what they discovered. Instead, they quickly and calmly began making preparations. The Demi-Fae were not an army and did not have resources of a fully stocked fortress, so Rowan declared they'd make do with what they did possess: their wits, determination, and knowledge of the terrain. Celaena asked if Rowan would send his kitty cat friend and the rest of his cadre, but he said no, fearing what Maeve would do. Celaena couldn't help but think that Rowan was too good for Maeve, and she wished she could offer him something to keep him with her. But she knew she did not, and so she remained silent. The next afternoon, Celaena was just coming down to help with dinner preparations when she felt the ripple of silence through the fortress. Fearing that Maeve had returned, she raced to the kitchen, but instead found Rowan, Emrys, Malachi, and Luca looking stricken with grief. Rowan kept approaching, the bearer of some inescapable doom, and Celaena knew she could not outrun it, and could not fall on her knees and beg for it to be undone. Rowan tells her the news. After Princess Nehemia was assassinated, a slave girl killed her overseer and sparked an uprising. The slaves seized the camp, but the King of Adarlan sent 2 legions to get the slaves under control, and they killed them all. But the horror didn't end there. Once the king got word of the uprising in Eelway, he sent 2 legions north to Endovier. None were spared. An inconsolable Celaena made her way outside and did not utter a sound as she unleashed her magic on the barrier. She burned and burned and burned. Chapter 49. Chaol went through the motions of duties as captain of the guard one last time before he departed for Aniel. He couldn't stop thinking about what Aedion had said and what Dorian had said and his role in Aelin's growing rebellion. And then the king told everyone in the room the news. He had ordered all the slaves in Endovier and Calaculla slaughtered. Dorian tried, begged even for Sorsha to leave, to get out of the castle before they were discovered, but she refused. And it was selfish and horrible of him, but he put up no further argument. Both Aedion and Chaol had the same idea, to go to the tomb to process the horrible news. A broken Aedion admits that he had done many depraved things, but nothing made him feel as filthy as thanking the king for murdering his people. There was nothing Chaol could say to console him, so he left Aedion staring into the darkness. The nobility of Riftfold gathered at the Royal Theatre, unable to stop gossiping about the news. It wasn't until they noticed that every musician on stage was wearing mourning black that they shut up. When the conductor raised his arms, it was not a symphony that filled the theater, but instead the song of Eelway, the song of Fenharrow, of Melisande, of Terrasen, and finally the song of Adarlan. When the music stopped, without a word or a bow, the musicians walked off the stage. The next morning, by royal decree, the theater was shut down. No one saw those musicians or their conductor ever again. Chapter 50. After hours of burning, Celaena still felt the wildfire inside, but Rowan approached and so Celaena let it die down. He informs her that Wenland won't be coming and gives her a choice to go to Dornell instead. Celaena refuses, and so Rowan decided to give her dagger back. And when he did, he looked deep into her eyes, into the very core of her, and said, "Fireheart." Ultimately, they didn't have to change much of their strategy to compensate for the lack of reinforcements from Wendlyn, and it wasn't until Emrys ordered them out to sleep that they stopped strategizing. Getting ready for bed, Rowan informed Celaena that he sent word to his cadre. Knowing what it took for Rowan to do that, Celaena tells Rowan that whether he likes it or not, she is officially claiming him as her friend. The next day, they went to the healer's compound to evacuate the patients, and when they left, they did not bother with goodbyes. It seemed like an invitation for death. She was awoken that night by a large, callous hand on her shoulder, shaking her awake. It seemed that death was already waiting for them. And here is when Addison started getting nauseous. Chapter 51. I think we've been betrayed, Rowan said as he efficiently dressed and prepared for battle. As they gathered on the fortress walls, a darkness enveloped the fortress. With lethal, predatory efficiency, Rowan began barking orders. And with a feral grin, General Narrok began to whip the warded barrier of the fortress with a whip of darkest magic. The barrier rippled with each strike, so Celaena took a step towards the gate to leave and protect the barrier, but Rowan tried to stop her. The two began to argue, but the sudden sound of screams of death and terror forced Rowan to relent. He ordered her not to engage them, only to protect the barrier. Surprise, surprise! Celaena had zero plans not to engage. With the weight of the deaths of Nehemia's people butchered, her own people butchered, Celaena stepped under the archway of stone, her hands wreathed in flames, a monster ready to destroy monsters. And here's when Addison actually did throw up. No, I'm just kidding, but I really wanted to. I did not feel good. I mean, I liked the great determination, but I did not feel like that was going to go well, to be honest. Chapter 52. The creatures began attacking immediately, but Celaena's barrier of fire held strong. She had not lied to Rowan about protecting the wall. As the fight rages on, Celaena realizes the creatures recognize the sword as Goldrun and realizes that they are not just evil maid creatures, but are actually ancient Valg princes that the king unleashed and gave mortal bodies to. And if things couldn't get any worse, Celaena felt the creeping sensations of burnout coming on. As her shield began to weaken, a movement out of the corner of her eye caught her attention. Thank the word, it was Rowan's cadre. With the final remnants of her power, Celaena made a bridge to the darkness and the cadre passed through without hesitating. But Celaena was tired. So tired. Everything hurt and the darkness. The darkness would be a relief compared to the hell smoldering in her veins. The moment Rowan saw his cadre begin to take down Adarlanian soldiers, he took one look at Gavriel's tawny eyes and sprinted for the gates. What he saw almost brought him to his knees. Aelin's Valg princess hunched and panting, barely able to keep her head up. Rowan drew in a breath to run, to roar, to summon his power, to do anything, when a wall of muscle tackled him to the ground, stopping him from getting to her. The creature took Aelin's face in its hands. Rowan began screaming as Aelin stopped fighting, and her flames winked out. Ugh. And here's where it got in the fetal position and started crying.
Sorry to end on a cliffhanger, everybody.
Yeah. Well, as you guys have been listening to us for a while know, there comes a point in the book where if you don't stop, you will just have to complete the book. And so it was like, stop here or finish the rest of the book, which is like 150 pages or whatever. So just tune in next week.
Yeah.
It was incredibly hard to stop, though. I was just like, but also in a way, I was kind of a relief because I'm like, maybe I don't want to know. Maybe I don't want to go through it.
Sometimes it's nice to break in the middle of it just so that you don't get too anxious. You know what I mean? Because I can feel my heart racing and I'm just like, wait, okay, I got to chill out for a little bit here because I'm really stressed. My little watch is like, you seem very stressed right now. And I'm like, because I am.
But in a way, it's also more stressful not to know. So it's just like, yeah, I don't know.
Mentally prepare for what else is going to happen, you know?
That's a fair point. Yeah. Fortify yourself.
All right. So thank you for the summaries. And now let's get into the analysis. Before we dive in, did you have any thoughts?
Oh, of course, always. You guys, you can count on me for that, okay? Even if I just have to make it up, I will have something to say. As you guys can probably already guess, my thought here is pretty on the nose, but this set of chapters is nothing but soul-crushing heartbreak. There's nothing happy about these chapters. There's nothing good. It's just really, seeing how everyone processed the news about Endovier and Calaculla, and it was just devastating. And all I really have to say is, damn, Sarah J. Maas knows how to write heartbreak and devastation. That's all I gotta say. So I'm hoping
it was
that
so dark.
It was so dark. It's so dark. I have a feeling the next set of chapters is gonna maybe get worse before it gets better. I'm just trying to, as we just talked about, fortify myself and mentally prepare.
Yeah, those are basically my thoughts. Yeah. We'll talk about it as we get into it, but it was weird to see such a huge shift in Celaena, and then where we ended, it felt like she was
ready to die again.
Yeah, and I was like, wait, but we've come so far. I was like, what are you doing?
I thought the same thing. So I think what caused the shift there again is the news about Endovier and Calaculla, right? She made all this progress forward, but then hearing that, she was like, this was my one goal, is to fulfill the promise I made to Nehemia. And then knowing that not she has actually failed, but she has failed in such a huge, gigantic way, I think it's just devastating to her. And she doesn't have the time to recover before all this happens. And so she's like, well, this is my fate. This is my shot to do something good before I go. And so I think the news did not do well for her mental state.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because that was her chance at redemption, I guess, or to
her path to make things right.
Right. Because she's been dealing with so much guilt and the promise that she made to Nehemia, that was how she was going to correct everything that she felt so guilty about. And then now the king is a piece of shit. And I hate him. I really hate him.
Fuck Erben Hamel. Fuck the king.
Fuck the king. Exactly.
I want a sticker that says that. Both of those.
Fuck Erben Hamel, fuck the king, yes. But there needs to be like the little finger emoji on it so people know that it's in an angry manner and not in a, ooh, I'm gonna fuck the king. You know what I mean?
Whoa! What are you talking about? Oh, Lorraine, do you have something on your mind?
You never know. No, I'm just making it very clear that this is an angry fuck them to outsiders if people don't know. Although maybe that's the joke. If you know, you know. If you don't, then you're just going to be like, what?
I was going to say, anybody who's listening to this point who's read the book definitely knows it's in an angry way. I don't think there's any confusion about that.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more about from an outside perspective, but maybe that doesn't even matter. So anyway, forget what I said, okay? Just ignore all that. Whoops. Anyways, okay. Let's get into the analysis.
Oh my god.
Starting with chapter 48. I titled this one Mousetraps. So, with no time to waste, Celaena and Rowan inform everyone at the fortress of what they had encountered. Messages were dispatched to Wendelin to ask for help, and those who couldn't fight were sent away, and patients at the healer's compound were evacuated. Word from Wendelin initially arrives back stating they would send who they could, and Celaena briefly wonders how she would face Galen and her other Ash River family members. But she sets the thought aside to focus instead on the impending threat of Narrok's soldiers and the creatures. Rowan quickly gets the fortress and Demi-Fae organized. Though the Demi-Fae were not a fully stocked army, they'd make do with what they did possess: their wit, determination, and knowledge of the terrain. It's noted that they assumed the skinwalkers had brought down the creature, but they hadn't found a body the next morning, and this is obviously some foreshadowing for the fact that they were not successful in killing the creatures, as we clearly see later on.
Yeah. When I read that line, I was like, oh, it's not dead. That's definitely going to come up. We're going to see that later. Again, because I know we talked about it in last episode. And like, do you think that the skinwalkers actually killed it? No, they didn't.
They were not successful.
Not. Also, I think it's important to note here, as Rowan is getting everybody organized, there is a line where they talk about Bass, and he says, Bass's scouting team reported that the creatures look like they're ready to move in a few days. As we know, Bass is the one who betrays the fortress. And I think this is the first moment where it is likely that the betrayal started. I think either this is the first time he actually talked with Narrok and decided to betray them, or he already had and was misdirecting them by telling them that it would likely be a few days, when in reality it would be sooner.
Feels like it was misdirection, intentionally making them feel that they had longer to prepare, because literally they had an evening or two, I think. And then Narrok and these creatures just showed up on the doorstep. The path in the woods Narrok's forces were going to take was laden with traps and snares, not enough to kill, but intended to slow them down and buy more time for aid to arrive. If all else failed, there was a secret tunnel they could evacuate through, though, as we see, that wasn't going to work because Bass. And I think it's appropriate to say, fuck Bass.
With the middle finger emoji, so you know we don't mean it in a sexy way.
Exactly. Yes. Over the next few days, Rowan efficiently leads meetings, and Celaena notes that he remained calm and steady, fierce even, despite the hell that might soon be upon them. Something the Demi-Fae clung to for steadiness. She envied him for it, but a small part of her wished that, quote, when she left this continent, she wouldn't go alone.
Oh, I guess I didn't really realize until this set of chapters how much their relationship has grown and how much they've come to rely on each other. Like,
yes,
at the end of the last chapter, when Rowan sees her and he's just so upset, it made perfect sense. It fit the narrative really well, but I didn't realize until I was reading it. I'm like, oh my God, they really care about each other. I don't want to say love feels like a big word. I don't know. It feels almost deeper than love. It's just a really like a devotion to each other or something. I don't know, but I was just like, oh, I want to tell him.
No, I totally agree. There's a very distinct difference in their relationship now. Probably ever since it's been happening over a long period of time. I guess I forget once again that she's actually been here for at least a couple months now, right? Like a few months?
I would say at least 2 months, probably 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. And so that's a decent amount of time. And then with everything that happened, Beltane and just her opening up and then Rowan opening up as well, I think it becomes clear that they need each other, you know?
Yeah. So, well, especially when you think about how at this point they're basically spending 24 hours a day together. They sleep in the same room. They spend their day together. Yeah. And even before that, they spent probably like 12, 14 hours a day together. Based on the time they were apart was when she was sleeping. That's a lot of time. The hours really stack up, especially when you first start dating someone. You maybe spend like 12 hours a week with them on a couple of dates, 3-4 hour dates, right? So when you think about that time compressed, that's a lot of time together.
True. Rowan interrupts her thoughts to tell her to get some sleep, but Celaena rubs her eyes and then thinks working with him was so effortless. There was no judgment, no need to explain herself. Rowan made her feel better, as if she could finally breathe after months of suffocating. Celaena instigates a conversation to ask why Rowan hadn't sent for his cadre for aid, since their presence could help turn the tide. Rowan responds, you know why, and Celaena guesses Maeve would order him back to Dorno. Celaena challenges how he could swear a blood oath to someone so cruel, but she simply hopes Wedlin's help would arrive quickly before attempting to go to bed. Rowan grabs her wrist to stop her, stating, don't look at me like that. So Celaena goes on to say, for whatever it's worth, all of this just proves that she doesn't deserve you. I think you know that too. And I really wanted to take a moment to commend Celaena's growth in communicating what she feels. Because I think she's really opened up, as we've mentioned already, to Rowan. And I like that they have a very honest relationship now. And that she feels comfortable enough to actually say what she really thinks and what she really feels instead of hiding it or covering it up with some kind of exterior personality or whatever.
I agree. I think she is getting better at being able to identify, process, and then verbalize feelings. And hopefully that continues because I think it'll be very beneficial for their relationship long term, honestly. I also thought it was interesting in that conversation when they're talking about the blood oath, Rowan says, I knew what I was doing when I drank her blood to seal the oath. So my first question is, but did he really know what he was doing? But I also don't feel like Rowan is someone who's easily duped. And so, okay, I'm assuming a lot of things here. One, that Maeve is evil or sucks or whatever, which I'm just going to say yes. Okay. And two, I feel like Rowan would see through a facade. He seems to be able to see people for who they are, right? And so then it makes me want to know, what does Rowan know that we don't? I feel like there's more to that statement, right? There has to be some purpose or intent for why he decided to bind himself to her. And I wonder if that's something that's going to be explored in a later conversation. If she actually asks, why did you do the blood oath? Like, what prompted you to do that? I know we get the brief description when he's like, Maeve found me in the woods and told me it was time to come home. And I know he was pretty messed up from everything that happened with Lyria, but I feel like there's something more to that too, because Rowan seems to have a deep-seated sense of respect for magic and Karanom, and it doesn't seem like something that he would take lightly. And so I think he realizes the enormity of that choice. And so I have to imagine that there was a really specific reason that he decided to bind himself to Maeve.
I could see either there being something really specific, or like maybe she compelled him to do it somehow, like tricked him into it almost. Or it could almost be just that he was in such a terrible state that he wasn't even thinking clearly enough to realize the long-term impact of that. Because like even with Celaena, and Celaena's circumstances is a lot different because she was found when she was a child by Arobynn. But still, she stuck with him all of that time. And it wasn't until she had found space away that I think she realized just how awful and traumatic and fucking horrible Arobynn and his treatment of her was. I almost wonder if maybe that happened with Rowan too, because we don't get a ton of info about his backstory, but we know that Lyria's death was really traumatic for him. I would imagine he was probably in a pretty vulnerable state and just desperate for a way to either forget about it or push it down or not have to think about it. So those are kind of my two things. So I don't think it's out of the possibilities that Maeve did something to force him into it or something, though.
I don't know. I just don't know enough about that kind of magic. It feels like a blood oath is just the physical properties of magic wouldn't allow you to compel someone to do. Because then why wouldn't Maeve just make everybody do that? Every single Fae do it? Because then they're obligated to comply and bend to her whim. So I wouldn't be surprised if part of the bond is it has to be a choice of free will. You can't force someone into it. But it would not surprise me if Maeve was manipulative or calculating in some way. I mean, that seems like par for the course for her. So I don't know, but I'm just interested to know more about kind of that time of his life and his decision making and everything there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess to finish out this little section of this chapter, Celaena leaves for the room and looks back only once to see Rowan hunched over the table in contemplation. She knew there was no way for Rowan to break his blood oath, and she had nothing to offer him since she was, quote, not a queen. Though she didn't tell him any of this, it didn't stop her from wishing she could keep him. I do think that breaking this blood oath is going to be a mini side quest subplot of something that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be within this book. I hope it's within this book, but I'm sure that this is going to be a thing. Like she's going to have to figure out a way to do it, right?
Absolutely. I feel like there's no way that she's going back to Aurelia without Rowan. And that means breaking the blood oath or making some kind of deal with Maeve, maybe that she promises to let him go for X period of time or whatever. But no, there's got to be some permanent or temporary resolution to this because they can have it hanging over their head.
They're just meant to stick together now. It's so obvious that they're like a little pair now.
Fire and ice, baby. Fire and ice.
The next afternoon, Celaena heads down to the kitchen to help, but instead is met with an awful silence that could only mean one thing. She knew it was too soon for Maeve to come in for a visit, but briefly panics, thinking that perhaps Rowan was being called back to Dornell after all. In the kitchen, she's met with the grim and solemn faces of Emrys, Malachi, Luca, and Rowan. He turns to steps toward her, but Celaena shakes her head in denial of the gut-wrenching news she was about to hear. Nothing could have prepared any of us for the news that we got, which is this. Following Nehemia's death, there had been a massive uprising in Calaculla, and rather than just stop the uprising, the king is a massive piece of shit, as we know, and he decided to have every single slave in both Calaculla and Endovier killed off.
Yeah, that's a nuclear reaction, man. I mean, it solved the problem, so I guess he's efficient, but he's horrible. And so I have a couple of thoughts about this. The first thing is when Celaena first enters the kitchen and Rowan walks towards her, there's a specific line that I really like the way it's written. It says, Rowan kept approaching, the bearer of some inescapable doom, and she knew she could not outrun it and could not fall on her knees to beg for it to be undone. I just think this is very tragically, beautifully written. For anyone that's ever received bad news, you know it before it happens. You can feel it. Hopefully all of you have never ever experienced anything like that, but I would imagine most of us that are probably in our late 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. You've probably been through some kind of trauma. There's a moment, I feel like, before someone tells you something really bad that you can feel kind of the air shift, right? Where you're like, I can never unhear this. This is the last second of my life before it changes. And I feel like she captures that moment really, really well. And it's just beautifully written. And I know what that feels like. I'm sure many of us do. And So I thought she captured that really well. And then secondly, I know we talked about this way back in comm, so throwing it back, but it's pretty spelled out here for us, but I just thought it was kind of as a refresher. So it's chapter 33 in comm, and we talked about it a lot there because it was kind of a random chapter. Like it's kind of just thrown in there about the unnamed slave girl who decided that she'd had enough after she felt the Princess Nehemia had been killed. And we speculated a lot at the time about why that chapter was included, and I still stand by my original analysis that it was meant to draw attention to the plight of Nehemia's people and really, even for just a minute, help us feel the way that Nehemia might and also the slaves in the labor camps. I think in hindsight, that chapter has served many, many different purposes. And we know now that it's meant to connect that event to things that happened now in Heir of Fire. And so I did a reread of it as prep for this episode. And oh, man, it's a devastating chapter. I forgot how moving it is. You really feel the anguish. And I continue to feel anguish. So not much has changed from comm to now. But I always love when there's a connection across multiple books in the series. I think Sarah Damas is pretty masterful at that then. So now we know a big part of why that chapter was placed where it was.
Yes, that's a good callback to that. And I do think, again, it's not that I forgot, but because we had taken that break between Tab and then now, I forget that the timelines of these events are much closer. It feels like it's actually been a lot longer or whatever because we read Tab after comm. So I will say that is probably my one argument is right now of reading it sometime before comm instead, just so that you don't break the flow and forget how close in time all of these events are actually taking place. So this news, of course, sends Celaena into a spiral as she reflects on her promise to Nehemia, the faces of the slaves she dug graves next to in Endovier, and her people, whom she'd left behind, whom she had let herself forget and had let suffer, who had prayed for salvation, holding out hope that someone, anyone, would remember them. She had abandoned them. She had been too late. Celaena feels the air thin as she begins to breathe faster and faster as Rowan murmurs the name she had spat on and defiled, the name she did not deserve, before she walks out of the kitchen and toward the fortress's invisible barrier. She silently unleashes her magic, begging the ancient stones to take it, to use it. The wards, as if sensing her intent, devoured her power whole, absorbing every last ember until it flickered, hungry for more. So she burned and burned and burned.
I know we talked about this kind of earlier in the episode, but I was really worried when this news came that this was going to send Celaena spiraling again. And at first I thought, oh no, she's going to be okay. She's going to have this calm, steely resolve. She's like, enough is enough. And then as we see when she goes to defend the barrier, she's like, she had not lied to Rowan about protecting the barrier, but she did lie about saving herself. And I was like, no. Celaena. I was like, damn it, we were doing so good. And then this huge setback. So we'll see where it ends up in the next set of chapters. Also, this is just a random world building thing that was just kind of interesting. When they were talking about how the king sent 2 legions of soldiers to the work camps, I got a little curious. I was like, how many people are in a legion? I don't know why in a legion I'm like, oh, it's like the 13. There's 13 soldiers. It's weird stuff. I'm like, that cannot be right. So I did some quick Googling and math, and this is just based on a 20-second Google search and based on the Roman army. So I don't know if it's actually applicable numbers-wise, but each legion consisted of between 4,200 and 5,000 infantry and 300 cavalry. So I don't know if the math is the same here, but that would be about 8,000 to 10,000 soldiers and about 600 cavalry. Because I think later there's a thought where Celaena wants to know how they fared because there's thousands and thousands of slaves in both Endovier and Calaculla. And obviously they probably wouldn't be able to overpower the legions, but they could at least do some damage.
Right.
And obviously that is not the case. So I just thought that was a little bit of interesting world building. And so I'm going to see if we get any more specific, I guess, world building info on like the military structure. I just know there's going to be some battle, whether like they had 100 legions. And I'm like, how many soldiers is that? You know, but the odds probably weren't great from the beginning.
I would guess not. I didn't know that was how many people were in a legion.
No idea. Yeah.
I was guessing maybe like a few hundred, not thousands.
Yeah. Yep. And again, it could be totally different from the Roman army to the fictional army of the King of Adarlan. But a lot of times I know people base their terminology on real world examples.
Right.
So I don't know.
Ugh. I really,
way,
again,
it ain't good.
No, yeah. And I was really left speechless for most of this because I was not prepared for that response. I already hated the king, obviously, but this just, it made me so mad. And now I just want to like cut his head off because it was so crazy. I was like, are you for real? These people were already slaves. They're demoralized. They are starving. They've been treated so poorly. And now you just absolutely decimate every single one of them.
Oh, I know.
It's just unfathomable.
And to make matters worse, when he's announcing it in the state luncheon, he's like, yes, we'll need to replenish the mines immediately. His only concern is we need to get more slaves. And you're like, wow, you really are the worst person in the world, aren't you?
Literally, yes. And then I guess as a side thought too, I was wondering if perhaps Celaena feeding the wall now with her power is part of what helped keep it intact for longer when the army does arrive later.
Yeah.
She doesn't really touch on that, but I was kind of like, oh, well, if it's absorbing her power, it kind of feels a little bit like a battery situation.
Yes, I had the exact same thought, especially because I think there's a description where it's like it seemed to hum with power, right? Like it had been charged up. And so I was wondering too if that was sort of lucky in a way that she expended all that energy charging it up, because that probably did help aid her in the battle that's about to come. So I thought the same thing.
All right, so that ends chapter 48, and now moving on to chapter 49. This one I simply titled, Fuck the King.
Middle finger emoji.
Yeah, middle finger emoji. Valg and Rifthold reach check in with Chaol, who'd spent the last several weeks basically alone, so he continues with his duties for one last time overseeing a luncheon for the king. He hadn't heard from anyone in the rebellion, and Chaol wonders if he was done playing his part in Aelin's growing rebellion. He figures perhaps it was time to learn what could be done from Aniel, since he would be closer to Morath and could figure out what the king was brewing down there. I did find that line a little bit interesting because perhaps this is Chaol starting to make this decision to help and like kind of align himself. He's not obviously pledging allegiance to Aelin or making a direct stand against the king yet, but maybe this is indication that Chaol will make this decision soon.
Yes, time to put my Chaol Defender hat on. I just want to point out that although he has not officially declared his allegiance and he has some moral conundrum about it, his mindset here is he thinks he's done with his part here. And now his first thought is, well, when I go to Aniel, I'll focus on what I can do from there. So his thoughts and words may be a little confused, but his actions clearly indicate that he has continued plans and it is a priority for him to continue to aid Aelin. Now, whether it's because he wants to actually get rid of the king or just help Dorian, either way, he's still making the right choice. And both of those reasons, neither one are necessarily wrong or right. So you may be a little frustrated that he's not all gung-ho Aelin, but he is still trying to do the right thing.
Everything was normal at the luncheon until the king stood to make an announcement, and nothing could prepare Chaol or anyone in the room for what the king would announce. The king says the Calaculla slaves' rebellion has been dealt with, and that they'd have to replenish the mines there and in Endovier. Dorian, with a bone-white face, asks for clarification, and the king paints a horrific picture of death as everyone realizes that all of the slaves had been slaughtered. The king addresses Adian and has the fucking audacity to say, General Ashfibber, you'll be pleased to know that since the purge in Endovier, many of the rebels in your territory have ceased their antics. It seems they did not want a fate similar to that of their friends in the mines. All Adian can do is thank the king, and Chaol wonders how he could possibly have found the courage and the will to do that.
I know we'll talk about it just in a minute when we get there, but Adian's response and reaction to that is so heartbreaking, and I can only imagine what that would have been like. You know, I love Adian. My poor Adian. My poor Adian.
Poor baby. I know. Yeah. Again, I really don't have any words for it. I think you just have to sit with your feelings in this set of chapters.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm still processing the news because I did not see that coming. So I'm still like, oh my God.
I know. It's really fucked up, but after the luncheon, Dorian heads straight for Sorcia's room and bursts through in a panic. He could see from Sorcia's red eyes that she'd heard the awful news, but he wastes no time in announcing he wanted Sorcia out of the castle immediately out of fear for her life. Sorcia is baffled by this declaration and rejects it, stating, no money you could offer could convince me to leave. Who will look after you? Who will make your tonics? You're not even talking to the captain anymore. How could I leave now? Which is a fair point. That's literally the only thing keeping Dorian safe.
Yeah.
Dorian is extremely fearful for her safety, though, and he finally understood why Chaol had sent Celaena to Wendelin, noting Chaol had sold himself to get Celaena to safety.
I do want to say that I do appreciate that this news prompts Dorian to better understand Chaol and his motivations. Remember, for a long time, of course, Dorian didn't know the whole story, but he was really angry at Chaol for the role he played in sending Celaena to Wendelin. And so I do appreciate that he finally realizes, oh yeah, like how much danger she really would be in still if she was still there. And I do think and hope that having that understanding will help them repair the rift in their friendship, because it still makes me sad that they have all this distance and awkwardness between them.
Right. I think it was nice, and hopefully maybe this will lead to a little bit of a shift back to at least being on neutral grounds. Yeah. There's definitely still some tension there, but I think he's beginning to understand at least that decision of Chaol's now. So Sorsha, the sweet, loyal girl, refuses and says, if you stay, I stay. Together. We'll face this together. And despite his terror, the selfish, horrible part of him kept Dorian from arguing any further. We cut back to Chaol, who had gone down to Elena's tomb for some privacy, only to find Adian sitting on the steps of the stairwell. Adian asked a rhetorical question about what the continents thought of them in Aurelia, stating, do you think they hate us or pity us for what we do to each other? Perhaps it's just as bad there. But to do what I have to do, I have to believe it's better. Somewhere, it's better than this. Chaol had no answer, and so Adian continues to say, I've been forced to do many, many things. Depraved, despicable things, yet nothing made me feel as filthy as it did today, thanking that man for murdering my people. Chaol, again, has nothing to offer or anything he could promise, and so he leaves Adian to mourn alone.
I mean, I don't really have any words of comfort, but I can only imagine how sickeningly horrible it would be to have to do that, and poor Adian. Poor Adian is all I have to say.
I know. It's really devastating because at this point, I mean, what can you offer? You can say sorry, but sorry doesn't really
make it better.
Well, it doesn't make it better. What can you say? Because it's just so devastating, and there's nothing you can do at this point in time.
Maybe I guess the reminder would be like, I know it's horrible doing that, but every day that you can keep the charade up, you're protecting people of Terrasen. But I imagine, even though he knows that's true, it's still little consolation because it's just so awful.
Well, I think not only that, but I think how quickly the king just squashed any of this. I think it really just reset the severity of the situation because they've been doing this rebellion thing. Adian's been leading the Bane and faking all these battles and stuff that they have. But as soon as something bad did happen, I mean, the king just like took care of it. He sends legions and just crushes it, just kills them all off. And it's kind of just like, whoa.
Well, it's like he didn't give it a second thought either. He was totally fine with just literally murdering thousands of people. And he was just like, yep, I handled it. And you're like, okay, that was like literally the most nuclear thing you could do.
Right. It's just unhinged behavior, honestly. And it's like crazy. And you know that you can't reason with somebody like the king. He's just one of those people who makes a decision, has absolute authority and control, and then just doesn't care about the consequences. Well, there are no consequences for him because there's nothing anybody can do against him right now. So he just can do whatever he wants. And I think that realization is probably really scary. So
yeah, I agree.
This next scene was interesting because we get a sense for what some of the people in Adarlan feel. It felt similar to the Rena Goldsmith scene in the brief chapter about the slave girl after Nehemiah's death back in Calm, but we learned that at a packed performance at the Royal Theatre, the entire orchestra was wearing mourning black and has played the Song of Yilwe. And then the Song of Fenharrow, Melisande, and Terrasen. There's a quote that says each nation that had people in those labor camps. The final song they played was the Song of Adarlan, and after the final note of the last song, they had walked off the stage without a bow or a gesture. The next morning, the theater was shut down as ordered by the king, and no one saw those musicians or conductors again.
Ooh, yeah. I didn't know really a ton of analysis here. It's just absolutely gut-wrenching. The whole thing, just picturing it in your mind, you're just like, wow. And especially the description of the juxtaposition between the actual, like, non-nobility citizens of Terrasen down in the bottom in the orchestra pit, and then the actual members of the orchestra, and then all the nobility just in their fancy clothes and silk, and all those descriptions about using the blood money that their conquest bought. It's just an incredibly moving scene. I think she really likes scenes like that because it is almost a copy in a way of the Rena Goldsmith scene from Calm, right? Yep. Obviously, different place, different person, but that's exactly what it feels like. And it's very tragic because you're like, all those musicians knew. They knew they were going to die. Oh, yeah. They knew they were going to be executed for that, right? And they still took a stand. And I just, I don't know. It's just, I'm all in my feels. No words, just feels.
I know. Yep. That's pretty much how I feel. Yeah. And I really hate the nobility that was sitting in the box. It makes me so angry.
Oh, Arab and Lysander were sitting up there in their silk and jewels, and we're just
worrying about where their new slaves would come from.
Oh my,
fuck off.
Can you imagine hearing that? Get out. Being it's probably going to be a delay in production. Can you imagine being so out of touch with reality and so horribly heartless? Ugh, I can't. I don't even want to think about it. That's horrible.
I don't want to think about it either. Okay. So that ends chapter 49. Moving on to chapter 50. I titled this one, When's Forever? Between Rowan and Celaena. Rowan joined Celaena at the barrier, which had taken up every ounce of the magic she'd thrown at it, and now hummed with fresh power. He gave her the space even though she was not done. And there's a quote that says, there was still wildfire in her mind, writhing, endless, damning. She let it dim to embers and let the grief and horror die down too. Rowan informs her that help wouldn't be arriving from Wendelin, and Celaena only says they didn't come 10 years ago. Why should they bother helping now?
Yeah. Yep.
Fucking Maeve.
I will say, yeah. Well.
Oh, well, see, that was
well, this
Maeve.
is technically Wendelin. Yeah. It's not Maeve's realm, but I will say their reasoning here does seem valid, right? Adarlan is attacking the northern coast, and they really...
Right, when we learned that, I was like...
Yeah. But still, in the moment, you're like, you couldn't even send 50 men. Even 50 would have made a difference.
Yeah. Rowan offers they could leave for Doranel tonight, and he would give her his blessing. But Celaena counters to say, do not insult me by asking me to leave. I am fighting. Nehemia would have stayed, my parents would have stayed. He argues against her, but I love that what Celaena says next. She says, you are the only person who can give the Demi-Fae a chance of surviving. So I am staying because you are needed and because I will follow you to whatever end.
To whatever end. Oh my God. Just rip my heart out. My heart is just in shreds right now. Okay.
Oh my God. Every one of these. It's always these battle scenes that Sardothien has, right? They get me every single time. They got me in Aquawar. They got me in Crescent City.
I'm just thinking about Aquawar. Now, yes.
Yep.
No spoilers or anything, but I'm just thinking, there's this moment where all the characters are together, and you're like, this is the last time they're all going to be together. It's going to be okay. And you just know. And they're trying not to say goodbye, but oh God. Yes. It's, yep.
It's all the speeches. They give such heartfelt speeches in these.
Yeah.
So, okay. But Rowan stays silent for a while and then asks, to whatever end? And she nods because she knew he understood what it was like. Rowan then extends her daggers out to her, having sensed her thoughts, and she takes it. Rowan looks into her eyes, her very core, and says, fire heart.
Oh my God. And then they go in for the death blow with the fire heart. I don't know why, but it just gives me chills.
Yes. When I was listening on the audiobook, I just got shiver went down me at both of those lines because I was like, oh my God, it's so sad. There's so much emotion. There's so much tension.
Fire heart.
No words, only emotions, no thoughts, just tears.
Yeah. I think that's what we should title this episode. No thoughts, just tears.
Tears. Yeah, basically. Okay. It turns out that Wenlin's reinforcements weren't coming because a legion of Adarlan's men had attacked the northern border. A legion of 3,000 men, to be exact.
Oh, well, see, that's so funny. I spent all that time thinking about it, and I didn't even catch that. where it said
I did, and I forgot. So until I read that line. I did put it in there.
Well, I'm glad one of us got it. So we can assume then, let's say a legion our operating math, unless it's clarified, will be about 3,000. So that means about 6,000 total in the 2 legions to Endovier and Calaculla. So a little bit less than what my guess in Google search said.
Still a lot, though. Like,
yeah.
Geez, especially knowing just what kind of influence the king has. I don't know to what extent he is influencing his full army, but we know that he's capable of influencing them, I'm sure, in a way that would make them not fight like normal human men, right? Like,
okay.
Either be able to ignore certain feelings or be extra ruthless or whatever it is. Like, I'm sure the king has done something to just his regular men as well. Rowan urged the non-fighters to flee, but they refused, choosing to stay and help instead. They quickly rearranged their plans and strategies, spending the entire day doing so until Emrys forced them to stop in order to eat because dawn would arrive soon. Rowan compliments her to say, "You did well helping me plan tonight." Celaena wonders how Rowan had known to call her Fireheart and if he knew what it meant to her, but she knew she needed to sleep, instead of asking the millions of questions that she currently had. Which actually, how did Rowan know to call her Fireheart? That actually is an interesting question because only her mom has ever called her Fireheart, right?
That we're aware of. Yeah, it's told to us in this book that is a nickname that her mother called her. Maybe her father too. I called the same thing out. But I mean, I literally just wrote, I would also like to know what inspired him to call that. Yeah, it seems like too much of a coincidence for him just to also randomly call her Fireheart. But at the same token, the nickname is like very specific, but in a way not hard to figure out, right? Her power is fire. She has a strong heart. So it does call back to this idea. How we had that discussion way back when about how Rowan always smells like pine and snow, and that's always the scent that she associates with Terrasen. And it makes me wonder if Rowan has some kind of connection to Terrasen. I mean, just kind of replaying that whole conversation we had. It is interesting that he called her that, because I don't believe that she has ever told anyone that. That was her nickname. So I don't know. It does make me wonder if there's some kind of deeper bond or connection, because what are the odds that he came up with that on his own?
There has to either be something that he could feel or sense. Like even that earlier line when she's like, he looked into her very core, called her Fireheart. The fact, remember like when he bit her that first time and we were like, why did he do that?
Yeah.
The very first time when they were fighting, and then he made some comment about being able to tell that, she loved Kale still or whatever, and like other weird things. And the fact that they have like this mental bond, like, I don't know.
I still think, I'm not 100% sure, but I still speculate that they may be Karanom. And maybe that's why.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's why.
I think so too. I even kind of feel like we're set up to go even farther than that. Not just Karanom, but maybe even mates, honestly, with the way that they're paired to be together all the time.
But how? He already had a mate. His mate died. I don't think you get more than one mate. That's like your only mate. Well, in general, in fantasy books, you get one mate and that's it. And if Lyria was his mate, how can he have two?
Girl, I don't know. Okay, that's for the book. That is for Sarah J. Maas to figure out for us. Okay. I'm just here to wish it into existence and then read and look for clues that support my delusions. Okay.
You know what this is reminding me of? Remember how he would not give up on the fact that she was Fae, and you'd bring it up every goddamn episode. And I'd be like, Lorraine, there's no textual evidence to support that. You have to wait. And you would bring it up every single episode. Yes. And you were just chomping at the bit. And then when it finally happened, you were like, yes. And I feel like this is going to be your thing now. Every episode, you're like, maybe they're mates. I don't know.
Maybe they're mates. Maybe they're mates.
There's no evidence to support that, but okay. And you're like, I don't know. I just wanted it to happen.
They are too connected. But no other characters have. Okay. Aside from that, though, if he did not already previously have a mate, do you agree that there are a lot of things that seem very suspicious? Like they are just too close. Maybe it is just the Karnam and like that's it.
That's what I think. I think it's just the Karnam. But I'm sorry that you can't excuse that. That's a huge thing. Okay, that's a huge thing. You can't just be like, just pretend like you didn't already have a mate. You already had a mate. And so you don't get two. You don't get two. Okay, you can't be that greedy.
Maybe they do in this universe.
But see, I don't like that because then it cheapens the mating bond. It makes it feel like it's too common. I don't like that. And you know what? It doesn't matter because they're not. It hasn't even been discussed yet. Okay. Oh my God.
Actually, okay. Speaking of things to text us about, guys, if you have not read the series yet and you don't actually know what happens, text us and say, okay, let us know your opinion. Do you think that this is just a Karanom thing? Do you think it's just Celaena and Rowan are close friends now and they have a unique, deep friendship bond? Or do you think it's because they might be mates? Let us know what you think. Send us a text message.
Yes, send us a text. Tell us your arguments pro or con, whether you think they're mated, why or why not, or can be mated or will be, whatever tense you want to use. And if you want to be right, definitely agree with me. Okay.
I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to remember this conversation
I want you to.
In the same way that I remember the Fae situation.
Listen, no, that's the thing is I agreed that it was very likely, but there was just not really evidence to support that, okay? Listen, if he had not already previously had a mate, then I would be much more inclined to agree with you. But that is a huge hang up for me, that he already had a mate.
Fair enough.
That's a huge hang up for me. And also, I'm sorry, I still don't like Rowan that much. He's okay. He's starting to become more palatable, but I didn't forget all that horrible stuff he said to her, okay? I didn't forget. I still remember. And he hasn't apologized. I'd like an apology.
True.
Well,
okay.
I'd like Aelin to have an apology.
It seems like she's forgiven him. But anyway.
But I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, Addison hasn't.
I hold grudges, okay? I keep them like little pets. I feed them. I nurture them.
You got little voodoo dolls that you poke needles into?
I don't know. Maybe. If you feel a weird sharp pain in your side tonight, it ain't me.
That's really scary. Right on cue. This is our Halloween episode, everybody. Ish,
oh my
I guess.
Gosh, that's right. It is.
Well, we're recording near Halloween. This is actually posted. This is for posting.
Don't tell them that.
Before.
No, it's not.
Okay, anyways, to get back on track, Rowan goes on to announce he had sent word to his cadre a few days ago, though Maeve might not let them come. Or some might not even ask her because they could be unpredictable, which I didn't know what that meant. I suppose it's meant to be unclear, but I was like unpredictable in the sense that they do whatever they want, or just unpredictable and you just don't ever know what they're going to do.
I think maybe both.
Yeah. Anyways. Celaena is shocked and asks, you actually called for aid, which prompts another mental conversation between them, or mental dialogue, I guess, is the term that we decided to
Thought dialogue.
That. Thought dialogue, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
She mentally asks why he changed his mind, and Rowan responds, some things are worth the risk. Celaena walks up to Rowan and, in a very emotional moment for me, says, I claim you, Rowan Whitehorn. I don't care what you say and how much you protest. I claim you as my friend. Rowan turns back to the wash basin, but Celaena could hear his unspoken words that said, it doesn't matter. Even if we survive, when we go to Dornell, you will walk out of Maeve's realm alone. And I'm like, you better not, Rowan. Again, they just have to find a way to break this damn blood oath, because now that she has a friend in Rowan like this and has an equal with her, I was just like, we cannot go back to her just being alone again. Okay, that is not going to fly for me for the rest of this series.
I know our main concern is supposed to be Narrok right now and the creatures, but I can't stop worrying about Rowan and the situation with Maeve. I'm just like, okay, but like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
How are we gonna get around that? Yeah,
because honestly, my thought is they're gonna have to kill Maeve. That's the only way out. I'm like, how are we gonna kill Maeve? Should we kill Maeve? What does that mean? Yeah, I know I should be focusing on Narrok, but gotta be honest.
No, this is a big issue.
It feels like a big
issue. It's a big
I
problem
agree.
Because then he can't go back with her to Aurelia. So,
and they can't save all of Aurelia and destroy the king.
Yeah, exactly. Narrok is a secondary issue to the Blood Oath. Okay,
Okay. Deal.
The next morning, they head to the healer's compound to help transport patients out. Anyone who couldn't bite remained to help with the sick and wounded, including Emrys, who had insisted he would stay there until the very end. Celaena and Rowan leave Emrys there along with some sentries before heading back without saying farewell. Many others refused goodbyes because it seemed like an invitation for death, and Celaena was fairly certain she wasn't on the good side of the gods. And I was like, no, girl, don't you say that.
Well, she kind of isn't, though.
I just refuse to believe that because she was quite literally God's blessed per the events of TOG. She's gifted as fuck and possibly has ties to a fire goddess. Mala Firebringer, maybe. That's not confirmed yet, but...
Thank you. You're right. Using your text evidence. Good job. Good job, Baba.
But it was a speculation of mine that I really liked.
I agree. I actually remember using that. I was like, ooh, yes. Yes, I do remember that.
So all of that combined, she's definitely going to make it through this book.
Yeah, I'm not worried about her till Kingdom of Ash. I mean, you can't kill her. If you're going to kill your main, it has to be like in the biggest, baddest sacrifice at the very end that
epic.
saves everybody.
Yeah, like the ultimate. She actually is primed for a major big sacrifice. Just
oh my God.
Even based off of the language that she uses in this chapter, thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
She may not die this time, but
yeah. If she does die in a book sooner than that, then there's going to be some weird resurrection thing.
Yeah, possibly.
Which I don't think that's where this series is going to go. But if it was, yeah. But no, you're totally right. Her entire personality is, I will run into the burning, collapsing building and carry everyone out on my back as long as they're safe. Who cares what happens to me? I mean, that is literally her core personality trait. Yep. So, and I have a feeling that in every fucking book, probably multiple times, there's going to be a save everybody but sacrifice yourself situation. And who will be the first in line to sacrifice themselves? Fucking Celaena. Okay.
Celaena.
She's going to put us through this torture for 4 more fucking books.
Aelin, Ash River, Galathinius.
Heir to Terrasen.
And self-sacrifice. That's really sad. Anyways, to end this chapter, with barely any sleep under their belts, Celaena is shaken awake because it seemed that death was already waiting for them. Moving on to chapter 51. I titled this one, The Battle Begins. Nice and straightforward. Rowan and Celaena quickly get dressed and battle ready, and Rowan says, I think we've been betrayed. Rather than a morning arrival, Narrok's forces had arrived early, having somehow avoided every trap and warning bell that they had set. The ward stones were still working, and the Demi-Fae were readying the defenses as they spoke. They don't have time to speculate about who betrayed them, as the smudge of blackness continues to spread across the horizon, devouring the stars, the trees, and the light.
First and foremost, you wrote the Trez.
Trez. At least I didn't read it as Trez. Okay.
The stars, the Trez, and the light. And secondly, so in this chapter, Rowan says he thinks that they've been betrayed. At this point in time, obviously we find out in this set of chapters, but who did you think betrayed the fortress? Like, did you have a thought, a speculation?
I had no idea because they didn't give us any clues. They just said somebody betrayed them and now there were soldiers coming into the tunnel. And I was like, I mean, he was preparing everybody. Like, it seemed like everybody knew the plan. So it's not like this was limited information to just certain people. All the Demi-Fae were involved in what the plan was. They knew what was going on. And so I was like, okay, there's just like too many options. I have no idea. Also, Bass has never, well, maybe he was mentioned like once before.
He has, yeah.
But
very briefly.
Right. And so it was not top of mind whatsoever.
I had a couple thoughts. The first one was I thought maybe it was Maeve, like she had been spying or sent someone to spy and then maybe got involved in some betrayal there. I did not think this was likely at all, but I did notice a suspicious Luca absence.
Oh.
Emrys is mentioned many times, but Emrys has kind of fallen off. And so I'm like, maybe Luca, but it seems so far away from his personality. I would actually be like, that's character assassination. There's no way he would ever do that. And so then my other thought was just, it's a no-name. It's a no-name nobody, which that's what it kind of ended up being. But I
kind of was, yeah.
So I was just curious if you had any specific thoughts or anything leading up to that and how it all went down.
They had set up the ward stones to serve as the last line of defense after the archer. As the darkness approached, animals fled the fortress area, and the little folk helped herd the animals to safety. Rowan gives Celaena instructions to take out Narrok soldiers with arrows, but Celaena has little intention of serving behind the lines, as we are about to find out. He warns her to use magic sparingly and avoid eye contact with the creatures. His instructions given with the icy calculation of a purebred, undiluted warrior. The nasty reek at some point signals the arrival of Narrok's forces, and Celaena is stunned to see that there were 3 fucking creatures, indicating that the skinwalkers had not been successful in killing one of them. And it's noted that the creatures wore deep black and still had the same wordstone torques around their necks. The same perfect male figure stares back at her as if he could already taste her. Gross.
I don't think it's
big. Yeah. Celaena shifts into her Fae form, and Rowan states the barrier cannot be allowed to fall because they all realized that all 3 creatures together created something infinitely powerful. Narrok eventually steps out from behind the creatures, and it's noted that he did not have that disturbing beauty like the monsters. Instead, he was scarred and powerfully built, though he did have the glittering black veins and a torque of obsidian as well. Narrok says nothing, but draws his sword and points it at the wardstone barrier. A whip of darkness slashes out to strike the barrier, and the stones whine from the impact. Celaena makes her decision, then, noting in the woods that night it balked from the flame. Rowan points out that the last time she looked into the creature's eyes, she'd fallen under its spell immediately, but she argues back, stating it won't be like last time. Celaena knew that if the barrier fell and the darkness reached them, the small chance of survival they had would be swallowed up whole. A cry shouting "the tunnel" reveals that 200 soldiers they hadn't seen outside the barrier had actually been creeping in from beneath thanks to the little shit betrayer that let them in. Bass. Talking about you. I know. Celaena heads toward the barrier then, and Rowan attempts to stop her, but she only knocks his hand away to say, "Leave the barrier to me. I'm the expendable one. I am a woman who has a power that might save lives. Let me do this. Help the others." Rowan weighs the decision, but finally relents to say, "Focus on that darkness and keep it away from the barrier. That's it. Hold the line, Aelin." Celaena nods as a good soldier would, but she did not intend to just hold the line as she steps past the barrier drawing her sword. She thinks this was the least she owed those murdered in Endovier and Calaculla. The least she could do after so long, a monster to destroy monsters. The flames in her hands burn brighter as she stepped into the beckoning abyss. That ends this chapter, and I do not approve of her calling herself a monster. Well, she's not a monster.
I mean, she is a lethal killing machine, and she was before she learned to control her firepower. So I think she means monster in kind of like a terrifying, lethal.
Yeah, that's true. I do forget that she was an assassin and killed a lot of people in cold blood.
It feels like she was an assassin so long ago. I'm like, oh my God, that seems like a past life, honestly.
I mean, the entire storyline has been, 3 years now? Because I think she turned 19, I think, right? In this set of chapters for her birthday. And we met her when she was like 16 initially, from where Tab picked up, right?
Yeah, because I think she turned 17 in The Assassin and the Healer. When she sees Irene.
Yes, yeah.
There's that comment about how she turned 17 while she was on the boat sailing to, or whatever, getting ready to go to the Red Desert.
So, yeah, maybe not quite 3 years, but like 2 years and some amount of months. But anyways, just when you thought we'd gotten past a lot of the negative self-talk and the hatred, and then she goes back to it. And I was like, no! So that ends chapter 51, moving into chapter 52. Fucking Valg. Dude, I really did not see that coming. I know we should have pieced this together, but when they revealed that they were Valg, I was like, what the? It really literally caught me off guard.
You had to pick my jaw from the floor. It was like one of those moments where I was reading at midnight. My husband was in bed next to me, and I was like, and he was like, oh my God, what's wrong? I'm like, Valg, it's the Valg. It's the Valg. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, it's the Valg. Yeah. That's why I have
internally
you, so I can text you. Yeah, screaming. Crying, vomiting, not feeling good. Not feeling good.
Okay. As soon as she was outside the barrier's protection, the darkness lashed out at her, but Celaena met it blow for blow with her red and gold fire. She ignored the overwhelming throbbing in her head and continued on even as blood trickled from her nose. She commands her magic to protect, and she maintains a wall of fire to shield the barrier from the ceaseless blows of darkness. Soon, the creatures began to attack her as well. swift and controlled, as if they'd had eons to practice swordplay, as if they were all of one mind, one body.
Okay, so I thought this quote in particular was really interesting, especially where it says, as if they were all of one mind and one body. And I wondered if they share a collective consciousness, especially once we find out they're Valg princess, which means they all are the same race, derived from the same kind of, I guess, place, species, whatever. And they kind of seem like a special class of demon or evil. Obviously, they have some autonomy because they are able to go out and kind of do things. But we do know also that they are controlled. The example that I was thinking of is when Murtaugh is telling the story about Rolf and how they saw the creature on the cliffs and it seemed like it was pulled back by some invisible leash. And so I wonder if the Valg princes are controlled by a greater or larger evil. I'm sure Narrok has direct control of them, right? But I wonder if there's a chain of command and there's a big, big bad. Maybe it's the king. Maybe it's something else, like the biggest, baddest Valg. Like if there's Valg princess, maybe there's a Valg king or something. I don't know. But it did make me wonder if they do actually share collective consciousness and they're controlled through that collective conscience.
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a lot of thoughts as well that we're about to get to when the creatures actually talk to her.
Same.
Despite the attacks, she had not lied to Rowan about protecting the wall and kept the barrier up as she defended herself as well. Celaena imbues her sword with her fire, which emits blue sparks as it collides with the black iron of the creature's sword, and we get some very interesting reveals. The creatures snarl in surprise and recognition of the sword and call it Goldrin, followed by the statement, "But you are not Athril, beloved of the Dark Queen, and you are not Brannon of the Wildfire." Suddenly, Celaena has a flashback of her duel with Cain when the creatures in the in-between had said, "You were brought back, all the players in the unfinished game." She realizes that the game referred to the very first wars between the demons that had created the word keys and entered into this world. Maeve had used their powers to banish them, but some had remained trapped in Aurelia only to reignite a second war centuries later, which Celaena had then fought in. Celaena wonders if the King of Adarlan had somehow figured out how to find the remaining demons and harness them, quickly realizing that these demons were, in fact, the Valg.
Woo! So much to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack. Again, I was shook to learn that these were the Valg. I feel like we should have seen it coming, but I felt totally blindsided by that. But okay, I have a lot of questions. So my first thing is we obviously need to talk about these swords, starting with Goldrin.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
This is one of my favorite tropes. I love special magical objects, especially swords. I still have not forgotten Damaris. We're coming for you, baby. I feel this is now 2 faded special swords. So first and foremost, I did a quick search on my ebook. This is the first time the name Goldrin has been mentioned in the series so far. So there wasn't like any hint of this or anything. Same thing for Athril as well. Obviously, we had a lot of speculation about the sword, which we now know is Goldrin. When we found it in the cave, we're like, oh, it's magic. It's a very ancient object. And this really just confirms all of that, right? I guess we know that wasn't Damaris given to Gavin to help defeat Erewhon? Isn't that how he got Damaris? Yeah.
I guess power-wise, Damaris just allowed him to see Erewhon for who he really was. It was like a sword of truth, essentially, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we know that Damaris had the spot for the gem and there was an eye, and that's what allowed us to find out the riddle. I do feel that the ruby, there's a lot of mentions and descriptions of the ruby and how it shines and how prominent it is, that I do feel like the actual gemstone itself is important. I know it's very common in the fantasy tropes that gems can hold power, like you can imbue them, like it's stored power. And so maybe in a time of great need, Aelin will be able to access that power. Maybe it's a protective thing, like the Eye of Elena in a way. There's a lot of directions you could go with that. Obviously, we just need to learn more about the history of the sword. We need to find out who the fuck Athril is. So speaking of, who the fuck is Athril, Lorraine? You got any ideas?
Great question. So first off, pretty sure that the Dark Queen is referring to Maeve. And then
yes, 100%.
Athrol must be the person that she had once loved. There was like that brief story. I forgot what chapter it was in, but I think it was one of Emerys's tales that talks about how Maeve had this great warrior that she used to love, etc. And so this must be Athrol in that case.
Totally. I also did my ebook search. Athrol's, this is the first time he's been mentioned, but the Dark Queen has to be Maeve. There's no other, unless it's a unknown character, which why? What purpose would that serve? And yeah, it has to be the same. And remember specifically, it's implied here that Goldrun belongs to Athrol. And Celaena found the ring and the hilt of the sword. And they're in that story, he's like, but the ring was lost. And so, yeah, I just want to know who the fuck is Athrol, why he has a special magical sword. And obviously he must have been pretty important if Maeve was in love with him.
Right. And also, these creatures recognize that sword and know of Athrol, which why do you guys know? They almost sound like they know Maeve pretty well and Athrol, which makes me quite suspicious. And I did find it interesting that the Valg referred to Maeve as the Dark Queen, because that definitely adds to just our baddie bad vibes about her. And why are they calling her the Dark Queen unless there is actually, in fact, something dark about her?
I know that's right. She's evil. I can feel it. If she's not evil, so help me.
I'm just waiting for the reveal at this point. Okay. But after that, the demons smile back at her and say, "We are the princes of our realm, a realm of eternal dark and ice and wind. We have been waiting for a very, very long time to take your sunshine again." Interesting. So that definitely
mass mercy to me. Sounding very...
And I was going to say, it definitely implies that they've felt, at bare minimum, a similar energy to the one that Celaena has, or is giving off, clearly. And then it prompted 4 other thoughts. So first off, they say princes, not kings. So are they just offspring of some other honcho Valg? For example, Erewhon, because obviously Erewhon was called the Dark Lord, or whatever.
Was he a Valg?
Or like more specific. I thought he was part of the Valg Wars.
True.
I think.
I mean, he could be like the great commander of evil.
Right.
He's maybe not a Valg, but he commands all evil. He's the biggest bad. And so anything evil falls under his purview. Okay.
Right. So like, what do they mean when they're princess, right? Obviously, they are super powerful as they are, but is there a power hierarchy? How many Valg are there? How do the Valg operate as a type of creature and evil, I guess? And are there different kinds of Valg? Is Valg just a general term? Is it specific to these princes? You know, there's just like a lot of questions that arise from that term. My second question, dark, ice, and wind, those 3 powers sound suspiciously like both Dorian and Rowan's power. I don't know what that means, but it feels suspicious to me.
Oh, that's a good call out.
Let me actually look up the quote, because I think there was a way that it was written. So the quote was, "She sent a punch of flame at him and he curled back, a realm of eternal dark and ice and wind. And we have been waiting a very, very long time to taste your sunshine again." So yeah, just the fact that the entire realm is really dark, really icy, really windy. Like those are things that sound aligned with powers that we've seen out of both Dorian and Rowan.
Yeah. I had not caught that, but no, I would agree. That definitely feels, I mean, descriptively
weird.
Yeah. It definitely feels like there could be a connection.
Right. I don't think we have enough to go off of, but it just, that's where my mind went, like magic wise. And then the third thing that came to mind, I am just even more confused about the king now, because you're telling me that a mortal man outmaneuvered these very powerful demons and is now using them to do his bidding. I know there's the whole word mark situation. He's figured out how to harness the word keys, but there's something, we just need more information about how this all actually happens, because it's so weird to me that these very powerful Valg demons that literally just eat your soul and your power. How did the king just figure out? It just seems like an ancient thing that in order to even counteract him, I guess you'd have to be using something really ancient. Granted, the word marks, now that I'm like saying this out loud, the word marks are a different form of ancient power, I guess.
I think the better question is, why have they not just killed him and taken over? And my only answer would have to be, it has to pertain to the word keys, and that the Valg themselves are not able to access or use or find the word keys. A mortal or someone else has to do it for them. And so the king is still useful to them. But I agree, because Celaena even has a thought where she is thinking like, the king is the dumbest person in the world to allow them back into Aurelia, thinking that he can control them. That seems pretty spot on, right? So there's definitely a lot more to that we have to uncover before we can like really answer that question. But that would be my best guess, is that it has to have something to do with the actual word keys and who can access their powers and how it works and all that.
Yeah, I don't know. We just need more information about that. And something seems off about that power dynamic to me. And then the fourth thing, we kind of lightly talked about this, but they specifically say they want to taste Aelin's sunshine. And this sounds very similar to a class of special from other series that possibly indicates something very important about Aelin and her power. I won't say anything else about it, but...
And you know, I did not think about that, but now you've said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, if you know, you know. Text us, DM us, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. We would love to have a nice long Massverse talk.
Well, not quite Massverse, but for the series, another cross book connection that we have to get into is what they say about Cain, or I guess rather what Celaena thinks about Cain. And it's actually chapter 49 in GOG. Cain specifically says, this is a direct quote, "You were brought here, all of you were, all the players in the unfinished game. My friends," he gestured to the dead, "have told me so." Okay, and so when you take that in conjunction with what the Valg princes say, this is what I think it means. We know that the Valg Wars have occurred essentially twice, right? The very first time when they entered the continent, and then the most recent time was hundreds or maybe 1,000 years ago, long time ago, with Brannon during Maeve's time, or well, I guess Maeve's still alive, but Maeve, Elena, Gavin, etc. And we know that Aelin is a descendant of Terrasen, of Brannon, right? So to me, what that implies is that all the players in the unfinished game is like, even if Brannon isn't able to be there, then his heir is, right? It's just a continuation of the cycle of conflict that has occurred. And so it's preordained, or it's destiny. Like perhaps maybe we're starting to enter the fated person trope, like the fated destiny kind of vibe. The one true heir is the one who can end the great conflict or whatever. And so I'm wondering if this is an allusion to that kind of idea that it's an unfinished game because one side has to win, good or evil, right? And it's the same sides, whether it be same people because they're still living or their descendants, is kind of how I took it. Again, just another nice tie-in to way back in the first book. It's so cool because at the time you read that and you're just like, what the heck does that mean? And now, 3 books later, you're like, oh my God. And so I love that. I love that there's layers and layers and layers of meaning and context when you get it. You're just like, it's so exciting.
Yeah, it really is. Valg Wars round 3, I guess.
Yeah. Third time's a charm.
Celaena, we'll actually get rid of them. But speaking of how to get rid of them, there was more interesting information that the Valg prince says as they continue this conversation. And Celaena goes on to have a very similar thought where she thinks the King of Adarlan was either more powerful than she could imagine or the most foolish man to ever live if he thought he could control these demon princes, as we briefly discussed earlier. They attempt to persuade her to succumb to them, but she fights back with her flames to say, "Brannon and the others beat you into oblivion once, we can do it again." Interestingly, the Valg responds by stating, "We were not beaten, only contained, until a mortal man was foolish enough to invite us back in to use these glorious bodies." So are they trying to say that they can never be beaten? Like they can only just be, as you said, contained in some format? What does that mean? Were they previously contained, like in the in-between that Elena had mentioned? Or do you think that they were contained somewhere else? But if they can't be beaten, is that the same thing as stating that they can't be destroyed? Or is there a difference? Can you destroy the Valg? Or are you only stuck with trapping them somewhere where their energy and their evil just can't get out? I don't know. There's a lot of questions around that language.
Oh, yeah. And I imagine that's going to be a big topic of conversation moving forward is how do we defeat this great evil? As you stated, there's a lot of directions you could go with that. It's the ultimate end of the series going to be that they banish them to a prison realm. Ultimately, here's what we can probably reasonably conclude. Number one, they were likely banished or contained in another realm or in the in-between using the word keys. And the reason that there was such a great gap between their appearances is because the word keys were hidden. And it wasn't until the king discovered them that he was able to open those gates and get reacquainted with them and let them in. It does seem like they do need a mortal form or body to be able to effectively utilize their power. Otherwise, why would the king even bother giving them a mortal body? Why not just let them out and let them run loose?
Right.
So it does seem like they do need a mortal body. And it makes sense and aligns with the goal of Narrok, which is to get the demi-fae, because they have magic in their blood, to make them hosts for the Valg princes. And regular mortals aren't enough, strong enough, whatever, to contain their power, right? That's also sort of highlighted with the torque. Those necklaces are necessary in some way, hold their shape or form in Aurelia. Remember, Celaena wonders if she beheads them, if that will kill them, or just let them escape their mortal form.
Release them.
So she's unsure about that. And so I think that sort of aligns with our questioning. I'm going to say that I do feel, and this is just purely based off what I know about fantasy and just a gut feeling, I do think that they're able to be totally and truly killed. The reason they have not been is it's not the right set of circumstances. They may require special magic, special objects, and all of these incredibly difficult circumstances to align perfectly in order to defeat the evil. And those circumstances have never aligned properly, right? And so that's kind of what is pushing me towards this idea of the fated one, the chosen one. And Aelin obviously is a great candidate for that. She has a special
lineage.
Yeah, she's a special lineage with special powers. She's special, okay? We need to find out more. But I think those are the safe conclusions that we can draw. But those are all excellent questions. And yeah, we're going to need some questions answered. The question is, who can answer those questions for us? That's
true.
Where I'm stumped. Maeve is a good candidate, but I don't fucking trust Maeve. And I don't think she would give that information willingly just because it seems like something she would do. So that is really the question. This is like a callback way, way, way far back. I do wonder if at some point the knowledge may be in the Great Library of Orinth or in the special and scrolls that had made. Remember way back in TOG, Celaena had this thought where she's like, she had hoped that the scholars had hidden the most important ancient knowledge. And I was like, oh, they talk about libraries a lot and how knowledge holds all the power. And so maybe we're going to end up on this quest for knowledge or some ancient scroll or script or accounting or something. So there's a lot of directions we can go now that we have this information. It's just a matter of which avenue we're taking.
True. Yeah.
I know. It's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to think about. And I just don't know. My only reference points for things that could potentially happen are obviously like the other series that we've read. So that's kind of where my head is going, but I don't know. It's very possible she does something different in this book. I don't know. I just don't know.
we don't know.
The Valg take another step toward her, once again goading her into embracing them. But Celaena snarls and hurls a dagger at their heads instead. The Valg dodges, though it gets a cut where black blood wells from, and then it lunges for her once again. The battle continues on inside the fortress, so Celaena forges on as well, though she hadn't had enough time to tunnel into her power or consider rationing it. It's clear that Celaena is weakening, but she holds on to the hope that Rowan would come out to help soon, because it was not weakness to admit she needed him, needed his help. But she's interrupted by a swipe from the Valg. Celaena's muscles begin to spaz and blood pounds as the Valg close in on her, and she attempts to keep them at bay with a wall of flame. She tries to breathe, but she coughs up blood instead. She then wonders how long the barrier would last if she ran inside, but Celaena had not imagined it would end like this. Maybe it was what she deserved after turning her back on her kingdom. One of the Valg princes reaches through her wall of flame, but she's distracted by the sight of 5 large predators racing toward the fortress. Celaena notes the forms of 2 wolves, a large bird, a large male, and a mountain cat. She hopes that if the newcomers could destroy the soldiers, the survivors could take the tunnel and flee before the dark consumed everything. She doesn't think twice about her power as she throws out a bridge of flame to Rowan's cadre, a path toward the gates behind her. The cadre races into the gate, and only the mountain cat, who we know is Gavriel, pauses to assess her, but she urges him to go as the bridge through the darkness collapses. Celaena thinks Rowan's friends had come. Good. Good that he would not be alone and that he had people in this world. Then she's slammed by a Valg prince into the barrier wall behind her. Having been weakened significantly and quickly burning out, Celaena thinks that it was all useless as an heir to a broken throne and a broken name, and that the darkness would be a relief compared to the hell smoldering in her veins. The Valg princes advance on her, but Celaena was too tired to continue fighting.
I did have a thought that came up during this scene, and I still feel that something is up with Celaena's magic. Obviously, she is expending quite a bit more energy here in much more stressful circumstances, but it still feels like her well should be much, much deeper. There's so many descriptions of like her uncontrollable, depthless power. I mean, people were terrified of it at 8 years old. It feels like this is too quick of a burnout for her. And don't get me wrong, obviously she's doing quite a bit here. She's physically fighting, she's holding the barrier, but something just still doesn't seem right. I do know that she hadn't really had time to tunnel into her well or think about rationing her magic, but still, I feel like there's something holding her back, or she just hasn't learned enough about her magic or her control, because I just don't think that she should be burning out this quickly. If she's burning out against 3 Valg princes and Narrok, which presumably are very powerful, what is she going to do against the big, big bad, against the word keys and word marks? I just feel like there has to be something more to her power and control, because if this is her limitations, that's so great, but that ain't enough. And she's going to need a big ass army to compensate.
I agree with that statement. It seems a little too early for her to already be tired, especially because when we get to Rowan's perspective, he's not tired at all. He seems totally fine. And granted, he's not using his magic like Celaena is, but still, I just keep thinking a little bit about the Beltane scene where Rowan is like, you let the magic do what it wanted to you and like let it overtake you. And in this circumstance, I'm wondering if it's something similar where it's not necessarily that she's physically tired, but she has these thoughts at the end, like the darkness would be a relief compared to the hell smoldering in her veins. Good that he would not be alone, that he has people. She's talking like she's giving up already.
Okay.
And I wonder if it's more of that. She's putting herself in a position to be a martyr because she's like, I will take them down with me, but at least everybody else will have time to get away or something. You know what I mean? And so it feels like she is giving up before she really should.
There's like a mental, emotional component that she's just kind of like, well, I tried. This is good.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go out this way. Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Something doesn't sit right with me about it.
Yeah, I agree. So we shift to a brief part inside the fortress this time from Rowan's perspective. He has been swinging his sword and holding his position at the mouth of the tunnel against Narrok's soldiers. We learn that a demi-fae named Bass had betrayed them, thinking he could get access to the power the creatures offered and make a place in the world for himself, which is utterly stupid. It's just fucking dumb. Okay, but fortunately, Bass had already met his end. So
Bye. Bye, Bass.
Bye, Bass. The soldiers were highly trained and clad in iron. And though Rowan wasn't tired, he could tell the Demi-Fae were tiring from the endless onslaught of Adarlan's soldiers. He notes a growl that shakes the fortress and sees the familiar animal forms of his cadre swarm in and quickly take up positions. Rowan then takes the opportunity to finally go find Aelin, who had to still be breathing since darkness had not fallen. He asks Gabriel where she is, but shows past him as he tries to warn him of her condition. Rowan continues past, noting that even his commander Lorcan had shown up, but he'd have time for gratitude later because what he saw beyond almost drove him to his knees.
All I want to say is that I know we talked about this when Lorcan's name first got mentioned. I think it was either the last episode or the episode before. Remember, once is an introduction, twice is a coincidence. We'll see what kind of role he plays throughout the rest of the story, but I do think we'll see him again if/when we go to Dornell. But now he's been mentioned twice, so I'm kind of like, okay. I feel like he's going to become maybe not a main character, but he's going to become maybe a more prominent side character. To what extent?
And Gabriel.
And Gabriel, yes, totally Gabriel. I don't know why, but I just kind of assumed that anyway, because Gabriel and Rowan's scene is much more developed and they seem to actually kind of be friends.
Right.
Lorcan is just like, he's my commander. He's the only person who ranks higher than me, only male who ranks higher than me. So,
and he's genuinely surprised that Lorcan showed up too.
Yeah.
Like he didn't really expect Lorcan to come and Lorcan did. So,
yeah, exactly.
Lorcan.
What did Lorcan do?
Yeah, what did Lorcan do? What has he been up to, I guess?
I want to know the joke. But see, I don't want to Google it because obviously don't want any spoilers. So I'm just like, how long am I going to not be in on the know? You know what I mean?
Probably a while. I don't think we're going to get answers about Lorcan in this chapter or in this book. But if he does continue to be prominent, I guess we'll just have to keep an eye on him. So Rowan sees that Aelin was standing hunched and feeble, sending pulses of flame out as the creatures advanced on her. He realizes that she had lied to him. He was about to run for her when he's tackled by Gabriel, who had him pinned and prevented him from running into the darkness that destroyed worlds. It's then that the creature takes Aelin's face into its hands and Rowan screams as it pulls her into its arms and her flames wink out. Oh, God. Again, I was just speechless. I still obviously was like, okay, I just don't think she's going to die. But what the fuck? I was like,
I think that was everybody's reaction.
I was just so stunned and so surprised by how everything unfolded and all the reveals. You think you know, but you don't know. You know nothing. I know nothing. We know nothing.
We know nothing. We are nothing. Everything feels so up in the air. I feel so insecure and unsafe and unsure. And I'm just like, we're not going to be okay.
My only other comment, and you're going to be like, Lorraine, stop. But I do think it's interesting that Rowan is screaming for her. And it just brings up the whole conversation about mates and not being able to witness them die or see anything bad happen to them.
Okay. But in fairness, given their friendship, I think I would be screaming if I was watching a friend about
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's fair. This is fair.
You know what I
True.
mean? Like,
yes. But I'm just bringing up a little reminder of that conversation about mates. So
wrap it up. Wrap it up, baby.
All right. So that ends chapter 52. And now we just have our favorite moments to share before we end this episode. So my first favorite moment was from chapter 49. It was touching. So it was the scene with the Royal Theatre when the orchestra plays the Song of Eoway, Terrasin Penhero Melisande, and that orchestra is gone. They did not make it through the end of that.
It's their final
situation.
Performance. Literally,
yes,
their
they were
final performance.
Literal martyrs. But I did think it was really beautiful that they chose to honor the songs and where all of the slaves had come from, and acknowledging that those places were once thriving, beautiful lands.
Yeah. That was also one of my favorite moments, just really moving and powerful and heartbreaking all at the same time. And I think that it captures the similar essence of the unnamed slave girl from Calm. How a single act of courage or bravery can be a spark that ignites a rebellion for change. And I think that it's extremely brave that she did that. I think it's extremely brave that Rena Goldsmith did that. And now all these musicians, because you know that they had to have a conversation about that. And they were like, we're going to do this and we'll likely be killed. And I have a feeling they were kind of like, if you don't want to do it, it's okay. You can leave. And I bet they all stood together. And that is really tragic, right? But to feel that your symbolic gesture serves a greater purpose in that, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. So in a similar heartbreaking note, I know we talked about this in the episode, but I still think that Sarah J. Maas did a really great job. And so the quote is, Rowan kept approaching the bearer of some inescapable doom, and Celaena knew she could not outrun it and could not fall on her knees and beg for it to be undone. I just think she does such a good job of capturing a sense of foreboding. And I don't know, she writes heartbreak well. I gotta say, she writes devastation well. Obviously, I like it when it's happier and funnier and about chocolate cake and shopping, but, you know, can't have the good without the bad.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess to help us lighten the tone just a little bit, my next three are touching. I think there were so many good lines in chapter 50 that really made me tear up. So my first one was when Celaena tells Rowan, I am staying because you are needed and because I will follow you to whatever end. His brows narrowed slightly and he says, to whatever end? If they do. I don't know. Well, hopefully they do. I think they do. Yeah.
We'll see what kind of end, okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, that's kind of ominous because you're like, okay, at what point is the end? And what does that mean? Does that mean both of them are going to die? I didn't mean to make this dark, but
yeah, I thought you're supposed to make us feel better, dark. Lorraine.
Oops, sorry.
You're not doing it very
Well, the next one's nice. Rowan looked into her eye, into the very core of her, and said, fire heart. Fire heart.
Fire heart. That was really good.
And then the last one from chapter 50 that I really liked is when Celaena says, I claim you, Rowan Whitehorn. I don't care what you say and how much you protest. I claim you as my friend.
Oh, fun fact, for the longest, I thought his name was Rowan Whitehorn. It's Whitethorn.
I heard that and I thought it was a mistake.
I don't know
in
why.
The audiobook, because it is not spelled thorn, is it?
Apparently it is. I don't know why in my mind it was canon that it was supposed to be Rowan Whitehorn. So when they said Whitethorn, I was like, huh? But that appears to be accurate. It is Whitethorn.
I hadn't noticed it before, though.
They've never said his last name before. That's the first time.
Oh.
They've never said his name before.
Oh, you know what? It is spelled Whitethorn.
Well, yeah.
Wait, this whole time I've been reading. I have been skipping over. Wait, oh.
I'm telling you, I just double checked it in my ebook. The very first time they ever say his last name is this
now?
chapter. I claim you, Rowan Whitethorn. Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe I've just been misreading anytime I saw like something about Rowan.
Yeah.
Because they would often say Rowan White something, but I think I was just skipping over the TH in there. I was just saying Rowan Whitehorn.
Same. Nope. Totally same.
Oops.
Yep. Whitethorn, not Whitehorn. So look at that.
Dang. I kind of like that less. I don't know why.
I like Whitehorn better. I don't like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Maybe we'll
Whitethorn just sounds like.
Oh, I know. But anyway, so wow, we're really good at this podcast thing, guys. We're really good at it. Keep listening for sure. So my last favorite moment is when Celaena is balladilling the Valg princes, and one of them says, "You should fear us and embrace us." And Celaena responds, "Embrace this," as she flings a dagger at its face. I was like,
that was a first.
Yeah, embrace this, bitch. Yeah, I love that.
I got really excited I was like, oh, okay, she's gonna defeat them now. Yes, keep going, girl. And then it took a turn, but it was a good line.
It wasn't.
That was one of my favorite lines as well.
Oh yeah, look at us, so in sync. We both were wrong about Rowan's last name. We both like that.
Whitethorn. It's like Manon. Manon, Manon. I've gotten used to Manon now, so I suspect I'll probably get used to saying Rowan Whitethorn. But
fair enough.
It's going to be weird for a little bit here. Weird. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, that is the end of our favorite moments. And now this concludes our episode. So, thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Booked on Fantasy podcast. As always, we're so glad you found us. So, please leave us a review, subscribe to the podcast, and go follow us on social media to keep up with us on a daily basis. And that is all that we've got for you guys today. So stay nerdy, everyone, and we'll catch you all next week for Heir of Fire episode 11. Bye.
Bye. And stay tuned for some bloopers. Beep. Oh my gosh. Okay. One moment, please.
Please hold while Addison types.
All I can hear is that like cliche wait time music when you're on the
elevator music.
Yes.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, I also have to fix my chair. I'm sinking.
Lay down, cuss. Lay down. Lay down, sir. Thank you. Guys, stop. No. Sorry, they're trying to start a fight.
I heard him. I heard him dance.
They head to the healer's compound to help transport patients out.
What?
That came out weird. I'm going to say that again.